So far, the website that we've made is really boring. If we test our movie, hit Control Enter, we can click on the buttons. They'll take us to different pages in the website. But like I mentioned, it's really boring. It doesn't really do anything for us. If you're going to make a website like this, why not just do it in HTML? What's the point of using Flash? One of the great things about Flash is that you can use it to make more interactive things. You can make animations and things like that. So let's talk about how we can make a similar website but with animated transitions. And what we're going to do is we're going to have each of our pages fade in as we click on them. Instead of just suddenly jumping to the next page, we're going to have the next page fade in. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to add a little bit more to our timeline. For our home page, for example, we don't want the home page just to appear as soon as the site loads. We want it to fade in. So in order to get it to fade in, what we're going to do is we're going to convert all of our home page content into a movie clip. So at this point, you would take all of your paragraphs, your title, everything that's part of your homepage content. Let's unlock that content layer, lock the buttons layer. We're going to highlight all of our homepage content and then hit F8 to convert it to a movie clip. Okay, so let's click on movie clip symbol here. Let's give this a name. Let's call this page home. And the reason I put page first instead of home first is, again, so that we could have it in... we can have these pages grouped together in our library since it's in alphabetical order. So all the pages will be right next to each other. So we have page home. It's a movie clip symbol. We'll click on OK. And we're going to do the same thing for every different page of our website. So we'll go to the About section. We'll highlight all of our About content. Hit F8 to convert that to a symbol. We'll call this page About. Click on OK. We'll go to the Contact section, highlight everything there, F8 to convert that to a movie clip symbol. We'll call this page Contact. And then one more time on the Products page, highlight everything, F8 to convert to a symbol. We'll call this page Products. Okay. Now that we've converted each of these to a movie clip, we can actually animate them onto the stage. And we're going to do that using the alpha property. The alpha property, if you're not aware, is the opacity or the transparency of a movie clip. So let's go back to frame 1 here, and we're going to basically take all of our frames and shove them over. So I'm going to highlight by clicking in the top left frame, dragging all the way down to the bottom layer, all the way to the right. Once everything is selected, we're going to click and drag again. We'll just drag everything out to frame 10. So now we have in frame 1, we have a series of blank keyframes here. And in frame 10, we have our home page. So as it is, our home page is on frame 10 and our stop action is on frame 10 along with all the code for our buttons. Now what we want to do is we want to make use of this section of the timeline right here and make our home page animate onto the stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first keyframe here, click on it to select it, and then I'm going to drag it back to frame 1. So now the first frame of our home page is on frame 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it invisible right here and fade it in so that it's fully transparent once it gets to frame 10. So I'll click on frame 10 now and hit F6 to add a new keyframe there. And now that we have it fully faded in frame 10, let's jump back to frame 1, click on our home movie clip, go down to our properties panel, change color from none to alpha, and then for our slider here, drag that all the way down to 0% so it's fully invisible, it's fully transparent. Now what we want to do is convert this to a tween, so we can right-click anywhere in between those two keyframes and click on Create Motion Tween. And now as we click on our playhead and drag it across, we can see the home page fading in. And we still have that stop action in frame 10, so once it gets to frame 10, it's going to stay there. Now our buttons, we don't want them to just suddenly show up in frame 10. We want the buttons always to be available. So let's click on frame 10 for our buttons layer to select that keyframe. And then once we have it selected, we'll click on it again and drag it back to the left. So our buttons will always be there, and our menu bar needs to do the same. So we'll click on frame 10 for our menu bar, click on it again and drag it to the left. So our menu bar will always be there. We'll just have the home page content animate in. So now when we test our movie by hitting Control Enter or Command Enter if you're using a Mac, we'll see the home page fade in, and then we can click on our buttons and our buttons work just fine. But we want all of our pages to fade in when we click on them. So we need to add even more to our timeline. So we're going to do this for the About page too. We're going to highlight everything from the About page all the way over. Once it's all highlighted, we're going to drag it over to about frame 30 here. Okay, now since we've done that, we need to extend out the frames for our buttons and menu bar. And we're going to have to extend them out quite a bit. So let's go ahead for now and just go out to the end and hit F5 to insert frames for those two layers, for the menu bar layer and the buttons layer. So now those two layers are visible all the way up to almost to frame 90 now. We might need to extend that or get rid of some of that later, depending on how long our timeline ends up extending. So we have our About page here on frame 30. Well, we want it to take the same amount of time as our home page, and our home page went from frame 1 to frame 10. So our About page is going to go from frame 21 to frame 30. So we'll click on frame 30 for the content layer to select that keyframe, and then drag that keyframe back to frame 21. Now with that keyframe in frame 21, we'll click on frame 30 and hit F6 to add a new keyframe there. So in frame 30, our About Us movie clip is fully visible. So we'll jump back to frame 21, click on our movie clip, change color from none to alpha. And now, since we've already dragged the alpha slider down the last time we made these transformations, it should be automatically down to 0. If not, then we'll just drag the slider down to 0 again. So in frame 21, it's invisible. In frame 30, it's fully visible. Now we'll just right-click anywhere between those two keyframes and click on Create Motion Tween. And now we see that one's fading in as well. Now we have a problem. In order to get this to work, in fact, let's go ahead and test our movie to show you what the problem is. If we hit Control-Enter to test, we go to our home page, but now when we click on the About Us page, it just jumps straight to the About Us page. Because remember, what we're doing is in our action script, we're telling it that when we click on this About Us button, we want it to go to and stop the frame labeled About. Well, right now the frame labeled About is here in frame 30. What we want to do is we want to go to and play frame 21 here. So we're going to change the name of this particular, or we're going to change the location of the About frame. We're going to click on that to select it, click on it again, and drag it back to 21. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tell it to go to and play frame 21, or go to and play the frame labeled About. So it'll play here, but if we don't add a stop action in frame 30, this is just going to keep going on and on and on. Okay, so since we need to create a few stop actions, I'm going to create a separate actions layer for that. So I'll create a new layer, drag it underneath the actions layer, and I'll just call this layer Stop. That way we'll be able to visibly see that our stop actions are on their own layer, and all the rest of our actions are going to span the length of all of our pages. So we also need to move our home page label. Our home page is not going to be out here at the end of the animation. Our home page is going to start when it starts fading in. So we'll click on that frame for the labels layer. We'll drag that over to frame 1. And we have our stop action in frame 10, but now we want our stop actions to be on this separate layer. So let's lock that stop layer. Click on frame 10 for the stop layer. Hit F9 to open up your actions. Actually, first, we need to create a keyframe there. Don't forget that. Hit F6 to create a keyframe, and then F9 to open your actions. And then we'll type our stop action. Okay, so now we can go up to our actions for the actions layer and get rid of the stop action there. That way we have all of our stop actions on one layer. Okay, so our stop action for the About page is going to be at the end of that animation when it finishes fading in. So when that finishes fading in here in frame 30, we'll click on frame 30 for the stop layer. We have to hit F6 now to create a new keyframe there, and then with that new keyframe selected, we'll hit F9 to open up our actions, and we'll type in our stop action. Okay, so now we just need to do the same thing for the contact and products page. So I'm going to move through these a little bit quicker. Okay, so for the contact page, let's actually drag these keyframes over to frame 41. It's going to start in frame 41 and it's going to animate out to frame 50. One way we can do this is we can click up here on the playhead and hit F5 a few times to insert some frames. And then once we get out to frame 50, we'll just click down here on the content layer and hit F6 to add a new keyframe. So now we have the contact information here in the keyframe on frame 41, and we have the same information on the keyframe on frame 50. So we'll go back to 41, click on that movie clip, change color from none to alpha, and then bring that alpha slider down to 0. Right click, create motion tween. So we have the contact page fading in, and once it gets done fading in, we'll create a new keyframe there in frame 50 by hitting F6, hit F9 to open up your actions, and type in your stop action. Now let me show you a shortcut for doing that. Let's erase this, close this, and let's go ahead and get rid of that keyframe. We'll hit Shift F6 to clear that keyframe. What we want to do basically is we want to put another stop action here. Well, we know that all that we have in this frame right here is a stop action, so we can actually copy this frame and paste it over here in frame 50. The keyboard shortcut for doing that is once we have that frame selected, we can hold on to Alt, click on that frame again, drag it to the right, over to frame 50, and then release. And now we have another frame, if we hit F9 to open it up, with that same code in it, with that same stop action. So that's a very easy way to copy and paste an actions keyframe. Okay, so for our products layer, let's drag this first keyframe over to frame 61, and we'll have it animate out to frame 70. So in frame 70 for the content layer, we'll hit F6 to add a new keyframe there where our products are fully faded in. We'll jump back to frame 61, click on that movie clip, change color from none to alpha, bring that alpha slider down to 0, then right click between those keyframes and create a motion tween. And then we'll just extend the frames out for the products layer. We also need to put a stop action here in frame 70. So once again, we can click on frame 50 to select the last stop action we created, hold on to the Alt key or the Option key if you're using a Mac, and click and drag that stop action over to frame 70. So now we have another copy of that stop action. Okay, so all of the extra frames out here we don't need anymore, so we can click and drag around all of those frames to select them. And then the keyboard shortcut for just deleting frames is Shift F5. Now make sure you don't accidentally select these last keyframes here when you hit Shift F5. We don't want to delete those. And then for our top action layer, we'll just go up to frame 70 and hit F5 to extend those frames all the way out, just so that we have a nice flush right side of our timeline there. Okay, so we've created the animations, but you'll find that these animations still don't work. If we hit Control Enter, go to About Us, that doesn't do anything. Contact, it doesn't do anything. Products, all we're seeing is a blank screen. And that's because we're still telling it to go to and stop. So if we go to and stop the frame labeled About, we're at the beginning of that animation where the movie clip is still invisible. So instead of stopping, we need to go to and play the About frame, and the Contact frame, and the Products frame, and the Home frame. So we'll go up here to frame 10, where we have our actions layer, hit F9 to open up our actions, and inside each of these functions, we're simply going to change these to go to and play. Make sure you use a capital P in play. The capitalization is very important when you're dealing with ActionScript. So we change all those to play. Now we hit Control Enter to test. Our home page fades in. We click on About Us. It fades in. Contact. That works as well. Products. And then we just want to make sure the home page works as well, the home button. Click on that, and the home page fades in again. So we can click in any order on any of these buttons, and the pages will fade in just fine. So that's how you can create animated transitions using ActionScript. So let's go to File, Save As. In our Project Files folder, instead of Simple, we'll save this one as Animated Transitions.fla. So we'll save that, and we'll move on with the next video.